Foreign Relations Committee will come to order. This hearing deals with the conflict and climate change are driving our global security issues, so I want to thank our witnesses for this food security hearing. Today, more people are desperate to find the next meal. More families are choosing to migrate in search of food. More children are going to sleep hungry. According to the World Food Program, 47 million people are living on the edge of famine, and 333 million are facing crisis levels of hunger. In recent years, food insecurity has been at its highest level since World War II. This is not isolated to one country or one continent. From Burma to Ukraine, from Haiti to Syria, conflict and violence keep people from getting enough to eat. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is dire and getting worse. I've said this before, we need to be more aid to the innocent Palestinians. We need to deliver it safely and quickly. I welcome the administration and our allies taking new steps to alleviate suffering through airdrops, but airdrops alone are simply not enough. Of course, it's not just war that's creating this global crisis. The effects of climate change are devastating the world's food supply. Fresh water and cultivable lands are scarcer, and they deals with the conflict and climate change are driving extreme weather events like severe flooding we saw in Pakistan. Thank our witnesses in 2022 for this food security hearing of farmland. Today, more people are desperate to find the next meal. Isolate ourselves. More families are choosing to migrate in search of food. Yet last year, the World Food Program faced a 60% funding shortfall. According to the World Food Program, I want to thank Senator Coons, million people are living on the edge attention to all of us. The need for additional 333 million. He has an incredibly difficult challenge considering the limits. In recent years, food insecurity has been at its highest level, and I thank him again for his advocacy on behalf of these issues. This is not isolated to one country. This shortfall has meant cutting food rations in the most desperate places in the world. From Haiti to Syria, and when people go hungry, instability often follows. Getting enough to eat. I believe strongly, as many of my colleagues in both Gaza do as well, that food security is a human right. I've said this before. It is important. We need to be more democratic governance and preserving stability. We need to deliver it safely and quickly. That is why it is in the U.S. national security and our allies taking the new steps to alleviate suffering. I'm pleased that the Biden administration has made food security a priority. Of course, it's not just war that's programs like Feed the Future, U.S. government, the effects of climate change are devastating initiatives, food supply. And the vision for adapted water and cultivable lands are scarcer. We need to incorporate state-of-the-art forecasting data, extreme weather events like severe flooding we saw in Pakistan. Our nation must continue to take the millions of acres of farmland, which is why it is critical we get this supplemental security. We cannot isolate ourselves, including food assistance. And yet, last year, the World Food Program faced a 60% funding shortfall, one of the most important areas is humanitarian assistance. I want to thank Senator Coons, who is continuously bringing these attentions to all of us, the need for additional resources. Across the American political divide, you can see an incredibly difficult stepping up with critical limits that have been put place. But even as we race to get people food before they go hungry, we must recognize that solving the global food insecurity means making serious this shortfall has meant cutting food rations in the most desperate places in the world. Of growers around the world. And when people go hungry, getting American-generated climate models and forecasts. I believe strongly, as many of my colleagues in both parties do as well, that food security is a helping America's land-grant universities and agricultural as democratic governance in preserving stability and security. And working with the international community, that is why it is in U.S. national security interest to accelerate approaches that we know work. Thanks to the generosity of administration has made food security lives around the world. It is critical we support programs like American Action will inspire other nations and the International Food Security Initiative. We all must do more. The vision for adapted crops. I want to thank our witnesses for appearing before us today. We need to incorporate state-of-the-art forecasting data to understand threats and changes to food security to alleviate this crisis. Our nation must continue to take insight on how to best tackle this problem, which is why it is critical we get the supplemental security funding passed, including food assistance for millions of people. The supplemental includes so many important areas, but one of the most important areas is the humanitarian assistance.
Our last hearing on global food security was in July 2022.
Across the American political divide, you can see an interest in stepping up with critical food aid. But even as we race to get people food before they go hungry, we must recognize that solving the overall food insecurity means making serious long-term investments, strengthening food systems and resilience of growers around the world. getting
333 million
American-generated
people
climate
are
models
facing
and forecasts to
acute
communities
food
in the global
insecurity.
south so they
An
can
estimated
plan for the
47
changing
million people are on
environment.
the brink of famine.
Helping America's land
These
grant
aren't just
universities and
statistics.
agricultural
These are
research
actual
centers
people.
playing a larger role.
Congress appropriates billions of
Working
dollars
with the
annually to
international
respond to
community to take
emergencies
up
through
innovation
life-saving programs,
and accelerate
including
approaches that we
Food
know
for
work.
Peace and emergency
Thanks
food
to the
security
generosity of
programs.
American
This money
farmers,
also
we are
supports
saving
initiatives to help
lives around the
communities
world.
grow their own way out
I
of poverty
believe
and become more resilient
American
to
action
food
will
shocks
inspire other
like
nations
Russia's
in the
war in
international
Ukraine,
community to
price
do more. We
spikes,
all
COVID,
must do more.
earthquakes, and hurricanes.
So I want to thank our
These
witnesses
are
for appearing
important
before us
programs
today
that we are
to give us their
currently,
valuable help
operating.
in what we can do
Unfortunately,
to alleviate
we
this
spend too
crisis.
much time fighting
I
to
hope that
resource
you can
these
give us the
programs,
insight
and
on
too
how
little
to
time
best
on
tackle this
maximizing
problem.
their
It's
impact.
now my pleasure
For example,
to recognize
nearly
the
70 years of
distinguished ranking member, Senator
Food
Rich.
for Peace.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
After
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
nearly 70
I, too,
years of
would
Food
want
for
to,
Peace, we still can't
recognize the
decide its
good work
principal
that Senator
purpose.
Coates is
Is it to
doing in
feed
this
hungry
area.
people, or to
Our
ensure
last
that
hearing
one U.S.
on
company
global food
operating
security
the
was in
three-bulk
July,
carriers available for U.S.
2022,
food aid
5 months
deliveries
after
has
Putin
a big
began
enough
his
subsidy.
brutal war against Ukraine.
The inability
and
or
his
unwillingness
attempt
to
starve the
resolve
world
this
into
leads to
submission.
higher costs.
Despite
and
strong
more
efforts to
impact.
combat
It also drives well-intentioned
combat
advocates
this,
to push
the
new
overall
legislative
state of
ideas
global
or
food
work
insecurity
workarounds
has not
that
improved.
only add more
783 million people
around the globe
efficiency
suffer. Let's be
from
clear.
food shortage.
Congress will never
333
appropriate its way
million
out of this
people
current
are facing
global food
acute
security
food
crisis.
insecurity.
We need to do better. An estimated
with what we've got.
47 million people are on
First
the
and
brink of
foremost,
famine. Countries receiving these aren't just statistics. To address these actual drivers, Congress appropriates billions of dollars annually to respond to emergencies resolving conflicts, governing justly, including combating corruption, emergency and removing the barriers that impede. This money also economic initiatives to help communities grow humanitarian groups out of poverty and become more resilient to their shocks, like Russia's war in Ukraine, need to price spikes and oversight, so they can ensure aid is getting where it is needed. They must do more to protect aid from being diverted by armed groups, criminals, governments. Unfortunately, we spend too much time fighting to resource these programs. Wide-scale adoption of technology that can improve targeting and verification, for example, including nearly 70 years of long Food for Peace. On the development side, we need to work more closely with the private sector to bring innovations. We still can't decide its principal purpose. I recently saw an Idaho-based company, people, to ensure that one U.S. AID grant to enhance the quality and adoption of food biofortified maize. The inability or unwillingness to resolve more of this leads to higher costs and lower impact. I'd like to hear from our witnesses. It also drives well-intentioned advocates with the U.S. government easier, so we can more effectively leverage the ingenuity of U.S. farmers and agricultural experts. Let's be clear. Congress will never appropriate its way out of this current global food security crisis. Let's use better with what we've got. Advantage. First and foremost, countries receiving aid must do more. The United States Canada must lead the way drivers global food insecurity within their own borders. This includes resolving conflicts, we do that governing justly, combating corruption, and removing the barriers
Senator Rich, I just
that
really
impede
want to thank you
economic
for,
growth
for
and
those
trade.
opening comments.
Humanitarian groups
I agree.
also
We need to look
need
for
to
more
do
efficient
their
ways
part.
to deal with
And
the
they
scarce
need to
resources
improve targeting
that are
and
available.
oversight
We'll never have
so they can
enough
ensure aid is getting where it is
resources to
needed.
meet all the
They must
needs,
do
and we
more to
have figure
protect
out how to do
aid
that
from being
in the
diverted
most
by
efficient
armed
way.
groups,
And your point about
criminals,
good governance
governments,
is absolutely
or
essential
the
as
implementers
part of
themselves.
of the
Wide-scale
solution to these
adoption of
problems.
technology that can
And this
improve
is
targeting
the
and
Senate Foreign
verification,
Relations
including
Committee.
biometrics,
Diplomacy is absolutely
long
critical to
overdue.
avoid conflict. which
On the
also
development
deals
side,
with
we need to
these
work more
issues. So
closely
I
with the
appreciate
private
very
sector
much
to
the
bring
manner of your
innovations to
opening
scale.
statement.
I recently saw
Well, we
an
have two very
Idaho-based
distinguished
company,
witnesses. I want to
Similia
welcome both of
Nueva,
you to the
won a
committee. Your full
USAID
statements will be made part
grant
of
to
our
enhance
record
the
without
quality and
objection.
adoption of
And you'll have 5
biofortified
minutes to sort of summarize your
maize in
comments, and
Latin
we will
America.
then
We should
get
see
engaged
more of this
in
type
a
of
question and
collaboration.
answer format.
I'd like to hear from our
We'll
witnesses
start
how
with
they
Ms.
intend
Dina
to make
Esposito.
partnering with the U.S. government easier
She is the
so we
assistant
can more effectively
to the
leverage
administrator of
ingenuity
USAID's
of
Bureau
US
of
farmers
Resilience,
and
Environment and Food
agricultural
Security.
experts.
She also
We've
serves
got the
as
best
FEED,
food
the future
producers
deputy
in the
coordinator
world,
for
and
development
we've got the
and
tools. Let's
USAID's
use
global
them
food
to
crisis
full
coordinator.
advantage.
She has
The challenges
demonstrated
are
a
immense,
deep
but the
commitment to
imperative
helping
is
those
clear.
impacted
The
by
United
food
States Canada
insecurity
must lead the
throughout
way
her
in
career.
promoting global food
Previously, she
security.
served
I
as
look
the
forward to
director of
hearing your
USAID's
thoughts
Office
on
of
how
Food
we
for
do
Peace,
that more
where she
efficiently
managed
and
the
effectively.
delivery of life-saving food assistance
Senator
across
Rich, I
the
just
globe.
really
She
want to
also
thank you
worked
for the
with
Mercy
for
Corps,
those opening
which guided
comments.
food security and
I agree. We
economic
need to
development
look
in
for more
40
efficient ways
countries.
to deal with the scarce resources.
I also want to welcome Dr. Cary, Fowler, who
resources
is
to meet
the
all the needs, and we have to
Department of
figure out how to
State
do
Special
that
Envoy
in the
for
most efficient
global
way.
food
And your point
security.
about good
Throughout his
governance is
career,
absolutely
Dr.
essential,
Fowler has been
as
at the
part of
forefront of
and
the
integral
solution to these
achievements in
problems.
agricultural development.
And
He
this
has
is
worked
the Senate
extensively
Foreign
with
Relations
the
Committee.
UN's Food
Diplomacy
and
is
Agricultural
absolutely critical to
Organization
avoid
and
conflict,
is the
which
founder
also
of the
deals with these
Spolsberg
issues.
Global
So I
Seed Vault,
appreciate very much the manner of your
facility
opening
that I
statement.
had the opportunity
Well,
to
we have
visit
two very
above the Arctic
distinguished witnesses. I
Circle.
want to welcome both of you
That's a landmark achievement for global
will be
food
made
security
part of
that
our
holds
record
the world's
without
largest
objection.
collection of
And you'll have
agricultural
5 minutes to sort of
biodiversity.
summarize your
A
comments.
special
and we
envoy,
will
Dr.
then
Fowler, has
get
spearheaded the
engaged in
vision
a
for
question
adapted
and answer format.
crops and soil.
We'll start
a
with
program
Ms.
that
Dina
works in partnership
Esposito.
with the FAO and the African
She is the
Union to address
assistant
food security
to the
through
administrator of
cultivation healthy
USAID's Bureau
soils
of
and
Resilience,
diverse climate
Environment, and
resilient
Food
crops.
Security. She
We'll
also
start with
serves
Ms.
as
Esposito, the future Deputy Coordinator for Development and USAID's Global Food
Chairman
Crisis
Cardin,
Coordinator.
Ranking Member
She has
Risch, and the
demonstrated a
distinguished
deep
members of the
commitment to
committee.
helping
So
those
many of
impacted
you
by food
longtime
insecurity
champions
throughout
for the
her
world's
career.
hungry and
Previously,
impoverished.
she served as the
I also
Director
want
of
to thank Special Envoy
USAID's
Fowler
Office
for
of
his
Food for
focus on
Peace,
strengthening
where she managed
indigenous
the
food
delivery of
production
life-saving food
through his
assistance
vision for
across the
adapted
globe.
crops
She
and
also
soil.
worked with Mercy Corps,
After more than
where
a
she guided
decade of
food
progress
security and
fighting
economic
chronic hunger and
development in over
malnutrition
40
after the
countries. Quite a record.
2009 global food crisis,
I
a
also want to
series of
welcome Dr.
unprecedented
Cary
shocks have
Fowler, who's
reversed
the
many of our gains,
Department
including
of State Special Envoy for
COVID-19,
Global
Putin's
Food
brutal invasion
Security.
of
Throughout his
Ukraine,
career,
ongoing
Dr. Fowler has
conflicts
been
in
at the
Sudan,
forefront of
Ethiopia, Yemen,
integral
and
achievements
now
in
Gaza,
agricultural development.
and
He has worked
unprecedented
extensively
consecutive
with
droughts,
the UN's
most
Food and
notably in the
Agricultural
Horn.
Organization.
This
and is the
miserable
founder of the
confluence
Spolsberg
means that
Global
today
Seed Vault,
735 million
facility
people
that I
are
had the
chronically
opportunity
hungry.
to visit above the
Every
Arctic
night
Circle.
they go to bed hungry because they can't
That's a
afford
landmark
enough to eat.
achievement for global food
That's
security that
120
holds the world's
million
largest
more
collection of
than in
agricultural
2019
biodiversity.
pre-COVID.
As Special Envoy,
140
Dr.
million
Fowler has
people in
spearheaded
the
the
most
vision for
vulnerable countries
adapted
are acutely
crops and
hungry.
soil,
They are
a
victims
program
of
that works in
conflict or
partnership with
compound
the FAO
crises
and the
that have
African
upended
Union
their
to address
livelihoods,
food
and they
security
must
through
depend
the
on
cultivation
humanitarian
of healthy
assistance to
soils
survive.
and diverse climate
That number
resilient
is
crops.
twice as high
We'll
as
start
it
with
was in
Ms. Esposito.
2019. Nevertheless, the committee and every American should know their generosity has kept millions of people and the distinguished members of the committee. So many at the height of the global food crisis in 2022, USAID was able to provide nearly $20 billion focus on humanitarian assistance, of which $6 billion was for emergency food adapted crops and soil. Beyond making our more than a decade of progress fighting situations, hunger and malnutrition, we must continue investments that we know prevent hunger in the first place. A series of investments that have had meaningful success. Many of our gains in the areas where Feed the Future, the U.S. government's signature global hunger initiative, ongoing conflicts in poverty, hunger, and child stunting all declined, and now Gaza by 20 to 25% consecutive droughts, most notably in the Horn. But we do not rest on these results. This miserable confluence means that today 735 million providing an additional $1 billion in supplemental every night they go to bed hungry because they can't afford enough to eat. A doubling of our annual budget and the first than in 2019 pre-2009. 140 million people in massive vulnerable countries are acutely hungry. They are victims of conflict or compound crises. As food prices that have upended their livelihoods and they must depend on humanitarian assistance. We rush to get high-quality seeds, fertilizer, and financing to the markets and into the hands of some of the world's the committee and every American should know their generosity the worst effects millions of people crisis by strengthening local production. At the height of the global food crisis in 2022, to humanitarian USAID was able to provide nearly $20 billion made by the U.S. Congress. The National Security Supplemental passed by this chamber last month includes beyond making our dollars stretch further in emergency situations. We must continue investments that we know prevent hunger in the first place. Investments that have had critical package of assistance for our allies in the areas where Feed the Future, humanitarian the U.S. government's signature key global hunger initiative has worked. Poverty, to make every dollar stretch farther, we are working harder than ever to leverage private sector investment with our limited development dollars. But we do not rest on these crowding in $700 million the extraordinary measure of providing an additional $1 billion by tapping into the expertise and supply chains of companies like JR Simplot, a doubling of our Idaho budget and the first McCormick Spices in Maryland since 2009. We are helping open new markets for American businesses a massive effort to harness Feed the Future to feed the present. We also partner to generate and scale innovation with a special focus on women who often comprise the majority of farmers to get high-quality seeds and yet lack fertilizer access to the same information and services as men and into the hands of some of the world's poorest connect us to 70 partners helping in the United States the worst effects of food crisis by strengthening 16 innovation labs. And we're doubling down on Feed the Future's core mandate, was critically important decision made by the U.S. several countries. The National Security Supplemental passed by this chamber last month for includes $50 million economic growth to prevent and respond. Already, we have identified a subset of future target countries in Southern Africa that, with adequate investment, we feel could give rise. It is important that humanitarian and development assistance remain a key component. While we're heartened by the progress we've made and optimistic about what our reforms will yield, to make every dollar stretch farther, we are working harder than ever to leverage a strong El Niño investment with our limited development dollars, crowding spiking needs in some parts of the world. Just last week, Zambia declared a national emergency by tapping into the expertise and supply chains of companies like J.R. Simplot, the entire population from Idaho or McCormick Spices in Maryland is facing at least new crisis levels of acute businesses. Administrator Power just returned from the region where she joined President Biden. We also partnered to generate and other administration with a special focus on women who often comprise the majority of expanded humanitarian access and yet lack access to the overall sustained services as men. To scale up these efforts connect us to 70 partners in the United States across 42 states. After decades of progress, the downturn in global food innovation labs, and we're doubling down on Feed the Future's core mandate. Without American leadership and continued bipartisan support in several countries, it would be that we know are most in need, looking and best poised, bending the hunger curve downward economic growth will require us to better anticipate. We have identified a subset of Feed the Future target countries in Southern Africa and continue to make that with adequate investment we feel could give rise our own economic well-being and fostering a safer and more secure world in the process. While we're heartened by the progress we've made and optimistic about what our reforms will yield, we should again be clear-eyed about the circumstances the world faces. A strong El Niño weather pattern has fueled weather disruptions that are spiking needs in some parts of the world. Just last week, Zambia declared a national emergency following a month without rainfall.
We still
and in
face
Gaza,
a global food
the entire
crisis.
population, from
Conflict,
some
extreme
2.2
weather,
million
supply
people,
chain
is facing
disruptions
at
are major
least
factors,
crisis levels of
and
acute
there are
hunger.
others.
Administrator Power
Food
just returned
systems
from the
are
region where she
complex.
joined President
Everything
Biden,
from
Secretary
farm
Blinken, and
to
other
fork has to
administration
operate
officials in
as it
continuing
should.
to stress
Thus,
the
there are
importance of
many
expanded
components to
humanitarian
address
access
food
as
insecurity
part of an
is to
overall
become
sustained
food and
effort
nutrition
to scale
security.
up the amount of life-saving aid
At the
we're
food
getting
production
into Gaza.
stage,
After decades of progress, the
there are
downturn
conditions
in
that
global
every
food security
farmer
and
wants
nutrition
and
security
needs.
is indeed
Good
concerning.
fertile soils
But
and
the truth
appropriate
is,
fertilizers,
without American
seed
leadership and
varieties
continued
that are
bipartisan
adapted
support,
to the
it
environment,
would be
the
far
climate,
worse.
and the market.
Looking forward,
Water.
bending the hunger curve
And
downward
functioning markets
will
and
require
access
us
to
to
those
better
markets.
anticipate rather
Trade
than
is
only
critical.
react to
The
future
majority of
shocks
countries in
and
this
continue
world
to
are
make
net
long-term
food
agricultural
importers.
investments,
We live
enhancing
in a
our own
highly
economic well-being and
interdependent
fostering
world.
a safer
What
and more
happens
secure
in
world
one
in the
small
process.
country,
Thank you for your
one
continued
small
partnership,
corner of
and
the
I look
world,
forward to your questions.
a
Thank
conflict,
you
a
very
drought,
much,
a
for
crop
that
a
testimony.
pest,
Dr.
a
Fowler?
poorly thought out policy rarely stays there. Chairman Cardin, early in my career,
distinguished
the
members
failure
of
of
the
the anchovy crop
notwithstanding
off the
a
western
dramatic
coast of South
decrease
America
in
was,
media
believe it or
attention,
not,
we
one
still
of the
face a
major
global
triggers
food
of a global
crisis.
food crisis. Conflict, extreme
Everything
weather,
seems to be
supply
connected.
chain disruptions are major
Historically,
factors, and there are
the
others.
most
Successful way
food systems
of
are
increasing food
complex.
production was
Everything
to increase
from
cropland,
farm to fork has to
but in the
operate as it
1980s,
should.
for the first time,
Thus,
global there are many
per
components
capita
to
food
address
supply
food
increased
insecurity
without
is to
an
become
increase
food
in
and
cropland.
nutrition security. We thus entered into a
At
new
the food
era
production
where
stage,
producing more
there-
with less. There are
conditions
conditions that
that
every
became
farmer
the
wants
imperative.
and needs. Good fertile soils. There are
and
many
appropriate
challenges to
fertilizers.
overcome. Seed varieties
We
that
have
are
a
adapted
clear and pressing
to the environment,
humanitarian
the climate,
reason
and the
for
market.
wanting to try.
Water. We also have self-interest.
And functioning
We all
markets
want to
and
live in a
access
peaceful
to those
world.
markets.
Trade is critical.
Problems
The
associated
majority of
with global
countries in
food
this world are net
insecurity
food
importers.
are beyond what any
We live in a
individual
highly
country can
interdependent
solve
world.
or be expected to
What
solve.
happens
in one small country,
But the way we choose to
one
engage
small
makes a
corner of the
difference.
world, a conflict,
The
a
United
drought,
States
a crop
is in a
prep,
unique
pest,
position
poorly
to
thought out
lead.
policy. This
Rarely
is an area of
stays there.
comparative advantage for us.
Early in my
It's where
career,
our strength lies.
the failure of the anchovy
We can
crop
lead with
off the
programs
coast,
such
Western
as the
coast
Feed
of
the
South
Future
America
program and
believe
others
it or
that you'll
not,
hear about today.
one of the major triggers
We
of a
can lead
global
with
food crisis.
technology, with research,
Everything seems
and
to be
good
connected.
old-fashioned know-how. We can lead with analysis, the most successful way of increasing food production most of all was to increase cropland ideas. But in the 1980s, for the first time, global commitment, per capita food supply
Thank you very much for that testimony. I'm going to start the round of questioning
into a new
with the
era
point,
where
Dr. Fowler, that
producing
you
more with less sustainably
concluded,
became the
and that is
imperative.
conducting on our values.
There are many
Autocratic
challenges to
governments
overcome.
have an asymmetric
We have a
arsenal
clear and pressing
to
humanitarian
attack our
reason
democratic
for
systems
wanting
of
to
government.
try.
We
also
saw
have
in Russia's
self-interest.
case
We all
the
want to
use
live
of
in a
oil and
peaceful
gas
world.
as a weapon of war
The problems
to try to
associated with
intimidate
global
other
food
countries.
Insecurity
We now
are
see that in
beyond
regards
what
to
any
grain.
individual country
They
can
have
solve or be
disrupted
expected to
Ukraine's
solve.
grain exports.
But the way we
We've made
choose
some
to
progress
engage
in
makes a
that
difference.
regard, thanks to the
The United
international
States
efforts and
is
the
in a
courage of the
unique
Ukrainians.
position to lead.
But the grain
This is an
supply
area of
from Ukraine has been
comparative
very
advantage
much
for us. It's where our strength lies.
disadvantaged.
We can lead
Russia,
with
on the other
programs
hand, has
such
increased
as
their
the Feed the
exports
Future
over the last 3
program
years
and
by
others
about
that you'll hear about
30%
today.
in its grain,
We can
offering
lead with
it, particularly in
technology,
Africa,
with research
at
and good old-fashioned
low cost
know-how.
or in some cases
We can
free.
lead with analysis
So
and
I
strategy.
just really
We
want
can
to
lead
get
with
your
diplomacy.
view as to how
Most
what
of all,
Russia is
perhaps,
doing
we
in
can lead with
Ukraine
ideas,
and the use
with our
of its
American
grain
values,
diplomacy,
and with
how
our
that's
commitment.
affecting
Thank
the
you.
stability of the world's food supplies.
Thank you very much for that testimony. I'm
Making
going to
Russia
start the
more
round of
aggressive
questioning
in
with
their
the
use
point,
of this
Dr.
weapon.
Fowler, that you
concluded,
Thank you,
and that
Mr.
is
Chairman.
conducting on our values.
Obviously,
Autocratic
Ukraine
governments
was one of
have
the top
an
five
asymmetric
exporters
arsenal
of a number of
to
important commodities.
attack our
Russia is
democratic
also
systems
a
of
top
government.
exporter.
We
And
saw
you're
in
correct
Russia's
that,
case
that
the use of
Russia
oil
has
and gas
seized some of the market
as a
that they,
weapon
in
of
fact,
war
had destroyed for the
to
Ukraine.
try to intimidate other countries.
Exports
We now see that in
Ukraine
regards to
are
grain.
up year over
They
year, but I
have
think it's always a
disrupted
little
Ukraine's
bit
grain
problematic
exports.
to compare one year
We've
to
made
the
some
previous year
progress in
because
that regard, thanks to
the
the
kinds of differences that
international
occur in
efforts and the
production
courage
year
of the
over year.
Ukrainians.
What we can
But
see
the
is
grain
that
supply from
production in the
Ukraine has
land
been
area in
very
Ukraine
much
devoted to agriculture is down
disadvantaged.
from pre-war.
Russia, on the other hand, has
pre-COVID
increased their exports
levels.
over the last 3 years by about 30% in its grain,
I think when
offering
I've
it,
taken a
particularly
look
in
at
Africa,
what Russia has done in Ukraine,
low cost or in some cases
it of
free.
course has been really
So
hard
I just really
to,
want to get your view as to how
fathom
what
the kind
Russia
of
is doing
destruction
in
that's been
Ukraine
wreaked on that
and the
country
use of its grain
and the
diplomacy, how
impact
that's
that that's had
affecting
globally.
the stability of
Yes,
the world's food
markets
supplies,
adjust,
and
price
again
wise,
making
but what we
Russia
can't adjust to
more
is the
aggressive
decrease in the
in their
production
use of this weapon.
coming from that war in Ukraine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a crime against and a war
Obviously,
on food
Ukraine
security.
was one of the top five
I'll just note
exporters
that,
of a number
of
of
important commodities.
all of my
Russia is also
many
a
years
top
of
exporter.
working in this area.
And you're correct that
I've been privileged to
that
see
Russia has
a number
seized
of
some of the
projects
market
and
that they, in
initiatives that
fact,
the
have
United
destroyed
States
for
has
the
undertaken
Ukraine.
in developing countries.
The
in
exports
recent years
in
through the
Ukraine
Feed-
are up
Feed the
year over
Future
year, but I
program,
think it's
for
always
example.
a little bit
I have
problematic
never,
to
in
compare
all of
one
my
year
years,
to the
actually
previous year
seen
because
a
of
Russian
the
agricultural
kinds of
development
differences that
project
occur
in
in
a
production
developing
year
country.
over year.
Perhaps they exist.
What we
I
can
haven't
see
seen
is
them.
that production in the land
Esposito, I
area in Ukraine
want to call
devoted
out
to agriculture
how
is
our
down from
other countries in the world are
and
responding to this crisis. The
pre-COVID
U.S. is the largest
levels.
donor nation. I know other nations are doing
I think when
incredibly
I've taken a
important
look at
work
what
in
Russia
regards
has
to this
done
crisis.
in Ukraine,
Other countries are not.
it of
Can you
course has
just give
been
us a
really
report
hard
of where we
to,
can be more effective in putting a
to
spotlight on
fathom
those
the
countries
kind
that
of
should be doing
destruction
more
that's been
in regards
wreaked
to
on
this
that
crisis?
country and the impact that that's had globally.
Thanks,
Yes,
Senator Cardin, for
markets
that question.
adjust price-wise,
You are
but what we
right that
can't
we
adjust
see
to is the
the United States
decrease in the
continuing to
production
lead on the humanitarian
coming from
response,
that war
covering
in
roughly
Ukraine.
45% of the UN World Food Program's
It is a
budget.
crime
We
against and a
continue
war
to
on food
call for
security.
more support from around
I'll
the
just
world
note that
to
in
support the UN
all
World
of
Food
my
Program.
many
On the
years
development
of
side of
working
the
in
House,
this area,
I think we're seeing some
I've been privileged
glimmers
to see a
of
number
new
of projects
partnerships
and initiatives that the United
that are
States has
trying to address some
undertaken
of
in
the
developing
underlying
countries
causes of
in
the food
recent
crisis.
years.
through the Feed the
Secretary
Future
Vilsack
program,
and
for
USDA
example. I
are
have
leading
never,
a
in
global
all of
call
my
to action
years,
to
actually
invest
seen
urgently
a Russian
in more climate
agricultural
resilient crop
development
research.
project in a
And they
developing
have
country.
generated over
Perhaps they
500
exist. I
partner
haven't seen
commitments
them.
from other governments and
Ms.
from the private
Esposito,
sector. Some
want
$17
to
billion
call
of
out
commitment.
how
So
our
we want
other
to
countries in
continue
the
to
world
use
are
those
responding
kinds
to
of
this crisis.
platforms to
U.S. is the
drive more
largest donor
support.
nation.
Likely
I know other nations
also
are doing
in agri-Ukraine,
incredibly
in the
important
Ukraine,
work in regards to
we continue
this
at
crisis.
AID to call on
Other
partners
countries
to
are
join
not.
us in
Can you just
supporting
give us a
the
report of
farmers
where
of
we can
Ukraine
be more effective
to,
in putting a
get
spotlight on
seeds,
those countries
fertilizer,
that should be
and
doing more
finance.
in
And so
regards to
we can
this
use
crisis?
all forums and our voice and your voice to call on other countries to support these kinds of efforts on the development side, as well as the humanitarian side, in the hope that we can mitigate some of the overall impact of the crisis. On the
That was a very
humanitarian
diplomatic
response,
answer, but not really
covering roughly
responsive to my
45%
question.
of the UN World Food Program's
What I'm going to ask that you
budget.
supply to
We
us are the
continue
numbers,
to call
so
for
that we
more
can see
support
what
from around the
countries are
world,
doing. We'll make
to
our own
support the UN World
judgments
Food
based
Program.
upon that.
On the
But
development
there are
side of the
certainly
House,
countries
I
that should
think
be
we're
doing a
seeing
lot
some
more, and we believe in putting spotlights on those countries.
new partnerships
It's one thing for
that are
us
trying
to
to
ask
address some of the
our
underlying
taxpayers
causes
to do more, and we
the food
do,
crisis.
and to get more resources. But it's
Secretary
also
Vilsack
important that the
and
global community respond to
are
the food
leading
crisis
a
that we
global
have,
call
and we
to
need to
action
have
to
from you
invest
the objective
urgently
information
in more
so we
climate
know where
resilient
to
crop
put our
research.
attention.
And they
Senator
have
Risch.
generated over 500 partner commitments
Thank you,
from
Mr.
other
Chairman.
governments and from the private sector, some
Ms.
$17 billion
Esposito, let
of
me
commitment.
ask,
So we want to
of you
continue to use
first.
those kinds
You
of
know, we've got
platforms to
countries
drive
that are
more
facing hunger
support.
and food
Likely
insecurity at a
in,
very, very
also
high
in
level,
agri-Ukraine,
but also are
in the
accompanied
Ukraine.
in those
We
same
continue
countries
at
with
AID
endemic
to call on partners to
corruption
join us
perpetrated
in
at really the
supporting
highest levels.
the farmers
And-
of Ukraine
and a couple of
to
poster children for
get
that are
seeds,
Zimbabwe and
fertilizer,
South Sudan.
and finance.
I wonder
And
if
so
you
we
could
can use our all
talk for a few
forums and our
minutes about
voice and your
how
voice to call
USAID
on other
ensures that
countries
our
to
efforts to
support these
improve
kinds of
ag
efforts
and
on the
food
development
security
side, as
are
well as the
accomplished
humanitarian
without
side, in the hope
contributing
that
to
we
the
can
corruption.
mitigate some of the
I mean,
overall
look,
impact of the
we're all
crisis.
trying to
That was
do
a
the
very
right thing
diplomatic
here,
answer,
but
but not
I'll
really
tell you, it is
responsive to
tough
my
when you
question.
run into these kinds of
What
examples.
I'm going to ask that you
Can you
supply
talk,
to us
a
are
little
the
bit about
numbers,
that and
so that we
specifically
can
as
see
you
what
can?
countries are doing. We'll
Thank you
make
for
our
the
own
question.
judgments based
The
upon
Feed the
that.
Future portfolio
But there are certainly
is,
countries that should
has
be doing a
really
lot
tried to
more. And we
prioritize
believe in putting
countries
spotlights
that
on
we
those
think,
countries.
have
It's one
the
thing for
commitment
us
to
to
invest
ask
in their
our
own agriculture,
taxpayers
as well
to do more, and we
as
do,
the opportunity to
and
drive
get more
economic
resources.
growth. So
But it's also
places
important
like
that the global community
Tanzania, which has
respond to the
tripled
food
its
crisis that we
investments
have,
for
and we need to
agriculture
have
in the
from you
last
the
year,
objective
and
information
other countries,
so we know
Zambia,
where to put our
Malawi,
attention.
Kenya, which
Senator
are
Risch.
investing in their own future. In all
Thank you, Mr.
cases,
Chairman.
whether it be the places like
I-
Sudan or
Ms. Esposito,
Zimbabwe or
let
these
me
other countries,
ask,
we are relying
of you first.
on
You know,
international
we've got
partners. We're
countries
not
that are
giving money
facing hunger
directly
and
to
food
governments,
insecurity
and
at
we
a
are
very, very
creating,
high
as you
level,
know, it's very
but also are accompanied
rigorous risk
in those same
mitigation
countries
efforts
with
and
endemic
safeguards that we're
corruption
working with our
perpetrated
partners
at really
to
the
help
highest levels.
ensure that the money is used
a couple
exactly
of
for its
poster children
intended
for that
purposes.
are Zimbabwe and
I would
South
also
Sudan.
say that one of the
I wonder if you could
priorities of Feed the
talk for a
Future
few
is to
minutes
work
about
on
how
policy reform
USAID
and
ensures that
regulatory
our
reform.
efforts to improve
Often
ag
some of the
and food
challenges that we
security
see when Special
are
Envoy
accomplished
Fowler and I
without
were
contributing to the
going,
corruption. I mean,
around
look,
Southern
we're all
Africa,
trying to do
is
the
that
right thing
we really
here, but I'll tell
do
you,
have
it
an
is tough
opportunity
when you
to
run into these
influence
kinds of
governments through our
examples. So
policy
can you
agenda
talk a little bit about that and
to be,
as specifically as you
to
can?
catalyze private sector investment. Thank you for the to question. Accept improved the Feed the Future seeds, portfolio to open regional trade has and so really we're trying tried to use to our prioritize influence in a way countries that we think would actually improve have the overall the context commitment to without invest in contributing their own to agriculture, further corruption, as well as the
Well, I
opportunity
appreciate
to
that,
drive
and,
economic
certainly
growth.
those
So
efforts are
places like
laudable and
Tanzania,
need
which
to be
has
doubled
tripled its
down because,
investments for
there's nothing
agriculture
more
in the
frustrating
last
than
year,
trying to do the right
and
thing
other
and then
countries,
seeing,
Zambia,
things wind
Malawi,
up in the wrong hands.
Kenya, which are investing in their own future.
Dr. Fowler,
In
I
all
want to talk
cases,
with you
whether
for a
it
few
be
minutes about
places like
another thing that's
Sudan
very
or
frustrating, and that's the
Zimbabwe or
US
these other
cargo,
countries,
preference
we are relying
requirements.
on
I
international
think
partners. We're not giving money
we really
directly to
believe that these
governments,
make food aid
and we are
delivery through the
creating,
food
as you
piece
know,
and
it's very very
Food for Peace and
rigorous
Trust
risk
program is
mitigation
too slow
efforts and
too
safeguards
expensive.
that we're
Do you agree or
working with our
disagree with that?
partners to help ensure that the money is used exactly for its intended
I'll have to
purpose.
I
I would
understand
also
it's a
say that one
political
of the
issue, and,
priorities of Feed the
so
Future
I'll
is
give
to
you
work
the
on
leeway you need
policy
there to answer
reform
the question.
and regulatory reform Often some of the
Senator,
challenges that
that's
we
an
see
issue
when
that
Special
probably
Envoy
is
Fowler
handled
and I
a
were
little bit more in
going
detail by my
around
colleagues from
Southern
AID.
Africa,
I'm afraid I
is
haven't
that
gotten
we
into
really
that.
do have an opportunity to influence
Esposito,
governments
do
through
you
our
have anything
policy
to,
agenda
contribute to
to be
Thank you, Senator Risch.
to
I'm
catalyze
familiar
private
with the
sector
cargo
investment,
preference requirements from my
to
time working in the
accept
Office of
improved
Food for
fees,
Peace. I can say
open
that at
regional
present,
trade,
the
and so we're trying to
USAID
use our
is able to
influence in a
comply
way
with cargo preference
that would
requirements
actually improve
while
the
meeting
overall
its
context
humanitarian
without
mandate.
contributing
But you
to
do know
further
that
corruption.
increased costs for
appreciate
for
that,
ocean
and,
transport
certainly those
on U.S.
efforts
flag
are
vessels does
laudable
come at
and
the
need
expense
to
of
be
reaching
doubled down
more
because,
people. Today,
there's
we
nothing more
estimate
frustrating
it's
than
about
trying to
twice
do the
as
right
much
thing and
to
then seeing,
move
things wind up in the
bulk
wrong
cargo on U.S. flag ships
Dr. Fowler,
than
I
other
want to
ships,
talk
and they
with
don't
you
always
for a few
go to the
minutes about another
locations
thing
that
that's
we
very
require.
frustrating, and that's the U.S. cargo preference
President Biden
requirements.
ordered an extraordinary
I
drawdown of
I
the
think
Emerson Trust.
we
in
really
April
believe that these
22.
make food aid
It
delivery
took
to
12
the
months
Food
and
$388 million
Food for Peace and Emerson Trust
to
program
transport
was too slow and too
$282
expensive. Do you agree or
$282
disagree
million
with that?
worth of food. And unfortunately, this is I understand it's a political issue, and
This is really
so
frustrating.
I'll give you the
When you're
leeway
talking
you
about
need there to
spending
answer the
more
question.
money than what you're actually delivering to get it there.
Senator, that's an issue
What can we do
that
about this?
probably is handled a little bit more in detail by my colleagues from AID. I'm
I
afraid I
think
haven't
that right
gotten
now,
into that.
we know that there are
Ms.
individuals looking
Esposito, do you
to
have
change
anything
the
to,
cargo preference
contribute
one way
to
or
that?
another, and we really do
Thank you, Senator Risch.
want
I'm
to both
familiar with the
support,
cargo preference
our
requirements from my
American
time
farmers
working in the
where it's
Office of Food for
appropriate,
Peace.
and
I can
also
say that at
meet our
present, the
humanitarian
USAID
mandate.
is
So
able
as
to
the
comply
bill
with
is current,
cargo
as the law is
preference
currently
requirements
written, we're finding that
while
we can
meeting
do
its
both of those
humanitarian
things.
mandate,
but
recognizing
you
we
do
could
know that
certainly do
increased
more
costs
for
economic
for ocean transport
if there were
on
further
U.S. flag
flexibility
vessels
in this
does
regard.
come at the expense of reaching more people. Today, we
Senator Coons.
estimate
Thank you,
it's
Mr.
about
Chairman
twice as much
and Ranking
to
Member, and
move,
thank you both for your
bulk
focus on
cargo
this at the full
on
committee level
U.S. flag
and for your
ships
partnership.
than other ships,
And
and they
I
don't
couldn't
always
agree
go
more
to
with
the
the Ranking
locations
Member
that we
we have
require.
worked, many of us, for many years on cargo preference to
President
improve
Biden ordered an
efficiency.
extraordinary
Senator Corker and
drawdown
I
of the Emerson
tried and
Trust
tried over many
in
years.
April
Senator Joe Hunt
22.
previously.
It took 12 months and
I do think real
$388
progress has been
million
made in
to
delivering
transport
food assistance
$282
directly.
$282 million
The availability
worth
of
food.
cell phones and individually
unfortunately,
identifying
this is
information
this is not the
makes
exception, it's the
transparent and efficient
this is
transfer of
really
resources
frustrating. When you're
to
talking about
hungry
spending
refugees around
more
the
money
world
than
far
what you're
more
actually
easy
delivering
and
to
far
get
more
it there.
efficient than it's ever been before.
What can we do about
The
this?
folks who are protesting here and who've been outside my house every weekend
I
are
think that
focusing
right now
understandably
we
on the
know that
severe
there are
humanitarian crisis in
individuals
Gaza.
looking to change
But I
the
want us
cargo
to take
preference
one moment
way
and
or
focus on
another,
the
and
numbers
we
that Ms.
really do
Esposito put in front of
want to
us
both
in her
support,
opening statement.
our American farmers, where
735
it's
million
appropriate,
people across the
and
world chronically
also,
hungry,
meet our humanitarian
140
mandate.
million
So
acutely
as the
hungry,
current bill is
double
current-
the
as the
number
law
in
is currently
2019.
written, we're finding
There's
that we
roughly
can
2
do
million
both of
people in
those
Gaza.
things. But
And we need to
recognizing
do
we
more
could
to
certainly do
deliver
more,
timely
if
humanitarian aid. I was just in the
if there
region
were
in
further
Israel, Jordan,
flexibility in this
Lebanon, and
regard.
elsewhere, meeting with the UN-related
Senator
relief
Coons.
organizations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Talking with
and
leaders
ranking
in
members.
Israel
Thank you
about
both
how we do a
for
better
your
job of
focus
that.
on this at the full
But that's
committee
for
level,
2 million people.
and for your
around the
partnership.
world, there's
And
140
couldn't agree
million
more with the
people
ranking member,
chronically
that
hungry.
we have worked,
and
many
so
of us, for
while
many
we
years
do
on
remain
cargo preference
focused
to
on the
improve
challenges
efficiency
in Ukraine
Senator
and Gaza
Corker and
because
I
of conflict.
tried and
we
tried
also
over
have
many
to be
years.
mindful
Senator
of
Joe
other
Hunt,
conflicts
previously.
around
So,
the world.
like
I do
Sudan,
think real
like
progress
Armenia,
has
like
been
Somalia,
made in
like Yemen,
delivering food
which
assistance
continue to
directly
literally
whole nations
the
at risk
availability
because
of
food insecurity, cell phones, and
I urge
individually
members of the
identifying
House to take
information
up and pass the President's supplemental that includes
transparent
$9
and
billion
efficient
for
transfer of
humanitarian aid,
resources,
but to the point
to
both the
hungry
chair and ranking
refugees
made at
around
the
the world
outset,
far more
and to the core
easy
point,
and
Dr.
far more
Fowler, of
efficient
your
than it's
whole
ever
work,
been
your
before.
vision for adapting
The folks
crops
who
and
are
soils,
protesting
we have
here
to make
and
investments
who've been outside
in
my
being
house
more
every
efficient,
weekend
in
are
improving
focusing
food
understandably
systems, in
on
having
the
severe
seeds and
humanitarian
soils
crisis
and
in
systems
Gaza.
that meet
But I
this
want us
moment.
to take
So
one moment
even
and
at
focus
this
on the numbers that
moment,
Ms.
this
Esposito
late
put
date,
in
I am
front of us
fighting in the
in her opening
appropriations
statement
committee to ensure that $50 million
$735 million
across the
people
world
across the
and
world
more
chronically
efforts
hungry,
at
employing
140 million
sector
acutely
come into
hungry,
play.
double the
So,
number in 2019.
I have two questions I
There's
wanted to
roughly
make
2
sure
million
we
people
got
in
to.
Gaza.
First,
And we need to do more
Africa
to
has the
deliver
ability to feed
timely
itself.
humanitarian
If
aid.
we get
I was just
food
in the region in
aligned.
Israel, Jordan,
A country
Lebanon,
like
and elsewhere,
Angola, where I'm going
meeting
soon,
with the UN-related
80% of its
relief
food.
organizations.
A country like
and
Zambia,
talking with
which
leaders
is going through a
Israel
drought,
about
how
could be
we
the
do a better
breadbasket
job
of
of
the
that.
whole region.
But that's for 2 million
The
people.
global food
Around
security
the world,
strategy
there's 140
has had a
million
huge
people
impact chronically
smallholders
hungry.
and SMEs.
And so,
while
we
we
need
do
to do
remain
more
focused
to
on the
mobilize
challenges
the private
in Ukraine
sector,
and Gaza because of
which
conflict,
is the engine
we also
of
have to be
opportunity
mindful
for
of other
post-farm
conflicts
for
around the
everything
world, like
that is
Sudan,
grown
like
and
Armenia,
produced on a
like
farm
Somalia,
that
like
leaves
Yemen,
and has to be
which
processed
continue
and
to
stored
put
and
literally
distributed.
whole nations at
Do you
risk
agree
because
we
of food
need to do
insecurity.
more to support
And I urge
emerging
members of the
investment
House to take up
opportunities, as
and
you
pass
referenced,
the
Ms.
President's
Esposito,
supplemental
for
that
larger
includes
scale
$9 billion
agribusiness that can
for
complement
humanitarian aid,
smallholder farms,
but to the point
and
both that
to
Chairman Ranking
rationalize
made
at
at
the
outset,
outset,
and to the core
the
point,
farm
Dr. Fowler, of
systems
your
of the
whole
developing
work,
world.
your vision for adapted
Thank you
crops
for the
and soils.
question,
We have to
Senator.
make investments
Increasing
in being more
public-private
efficient,
partnerships is
in
actually at the
improving food
forefront of the
systems,
new global food
in
security
having
strategy. It's
seeds and
always been
soils
important
and
to us.
systems
We
that
generated
meet this moment.
$700
So
million
even
in
at this
leveraged private sector
moment, this
money,
late date, I am fighting in the
in
Appropriations
2022,
Committee
and
to
we're
ensure
aiming
that $50
for
million
closer to
you
$900
referenced,
million
Ms.
in the
Esposito, and
coming
more
years.
efforts at
Some of the
deploying
examples of
the
that
private
work
sector
Cary,
come into
Special Envoy
play.
Fowler
So
and I saw
I have two
in
questions I wanted to
Zambia,
make
where
sure
an
we
American
got to.
company,
First,
Pyxis Agriculture,
Africa
was,
has the ability to feed
working with an
itself
innovation lab, an
if
American
we get
innovation
food
lab, to
systems
develop
aligned. A country like
improved
Angola,
seeds,
where
both
I'm going
soybean
soon,
varieties that
imports
were
80% of its
quadrupling
food.
yields for some
A country like
farmers, as well as
Zambia, which
peanut
is
varieties.
going through a drought, could be
They,
the breadbasket of the whole region.
In turn, we have
The global food
invested
security
in helping
strategy
to de-risk their investment,
has had
and
a
they
huge
in turn are
impact
using
on
over
smallholders and
150,000
SMEs,
farmers
but we
to
need to do
contract
more
farm.
to
So there you have
mobilize the private
a
sector,
really nice linkage
which is
between
the engine
smallholder
of
farmers
opportunity
and the
for
goals and
post-farm
ambitions
gate for
of
everything that
commercial
is grown and produced
agriculture.
on a
The
farm.
same
I'm
as
about to
leaves
go to
and has to
Zambia, and
be
I look forward
processed
to
and
talking with you in more
distributed.
detail about that. If I
Do
could,
you
with the
agree we
forbearance
need
of
to
the
do
chairman.
more to support
Senators Graham and I
emerging
have
investment
introduced
opportunities, as you
legislation to
referenced, Ms.
create an
Esposito,
international
for
foundation
larger
for
scale
food security.
agribusiness that can
The whole
complement
point of
smallholder
it
farms
is to provide
and to
blended
rationalize
financing
and
tools
modernize
that would
the
catalyze
farm
investment,
systems
not
of
to
the
compete
developing
with
world.
Feed the Future, but to complement
Thank you
it.
for the question,
Do you think
Senator.
that blending
Increasing
financing
public-private
tools,
partnerships
credit,
is
risk
actually at the
insurance, first
forefront
loss
of the new global
guarantees
food security
could help
strategy.
scale
It's
your
always
efforts,
been important
and
to
Dr.
us.
Fowler
We generated
complement your efforts with
$700 million
smallholder
in
farmers
leveraged
to
private
leverage
sector
larger
money
agribusiness investments.
in 2022, and we're aiming for
Thank you
closer
for the
to
question.
$900
We are
million
really
in the
grateful
coming years.
to you,
Some of
Senator
the
Coons
examples
and
of that
Senator
work
Graham,
in the fight against
Special Envoy
hunger
Fowler
and I saw
vocal,
in Zambia, where an American company, Pyxis
protestations
Agriculture,
on the state
was
of the world,
working with an
and
innovation lab, an
your
American
leadership
innovation
in
lab, to
constantly
develop
looking for new ways of doing
improved
business.
seeds, both soybean varieties
we are
that
really
were
fortunate to have your
quadrupling
passion
yields for some
and
farmers, as well
engagement
as
on this.
peanut varieties.
We have
provided some general comments, and
in
we
turn,
in general
we
are
have
very
invested
supportive
in
of the
helping
vision
to de-risk
behind
their
the
investment, and they in
Global Food
turn are
Security
using
Foundation bill.
over
We really would like to sit down. We
to
haven't had a
contract
chance to
farm.
sit down
So
with
there
all
you
of
have
you
a-
and go
a
through the
really
details
nice linkage
so
between
that we can really
smallholder
work
farmers
on ensuring
and the
that
goals
things
and
are
ambitions
mutually
of
reinforcing and
commercial
complementary.
agriculture.
I'm about to go to Zambia, and I look forward to talking with you in more detail about
we
that.
can do
if
more
I
to
could,
crowd
with
in
the
private
forbearance of
sector
the
is
chairman.
absolutely on point.
Senators Graham and I
we
have
think there's a way
introduced
to
legislation to
connect
create an
these two
international
efforts,
foundation for food security. The whole point of it is to provide blended financing vehicle that will survive across several administrations, not to compete with Feed the Future, but to complement blended
Do you
finance
think
opportunities. That blending financing tools,
Chairman,
credit,
would you allow
risk
Dr.
insurance,
Fowler to briefly
first loss
answer?
guarantees could help scale your efforts,
Thank you.
and
I'll be
Dr.
brief.
Fowler complement your
The
efforts with
programmatic
smallholder
elements that you
farmers
mentioned
to
are
leverage
indeed some of the
larger
missing
agribusiness
pieces
investment.
that we often see in Africa and other
Thank you for the
continents for
question.
scaling
We are
up the
really
kinds of
grateful
technologies
to
we
you,
have,
Senator
and
Coons
for
and
getting
Senator
the private
Graham,
sector involved.
in the fight against hunger.
So
Your
those are important
vocal
things to highlight. Thank you for doing so.
Well, I'd look forward to a chance to meet with both of you
protestations
to
on the
hammer
state
out
of-
some of the
of
details
the
to make sure
world,
we can move
and
forward in a
your
timely way.
leadership in
Thank you for your
constantly
forbearance,
looking for new
Mr. Chairman.
ways of doing
Thank you to
business.
both of our witnesses for your very
We are really
long,
fortunate to have your
engaged,
passion
determined, and effective
and engagement
advocacy
on
on
this.
behalf of the world's hungry.
We have
It's great to see
provided
both
some
of you.
general
Thank you.
comments, and we,
Senator
in general,
Shaheen.
are very supportive of the vision behind the Global Food Security Foundation bill. We really would like to sit down. We haven't had a chance to sit down with all of you and go through the
Thank you,
details.
Mr. Chairman.
So that we can
I
really
think
work on ensuring that things are
this is
mutually
probably first
reinforcing
for Dr. Fowler,
and complementary.
because
But
in your
certainly this idea
closing comments,
that
talked about the way we
can do more to
choose
crowd
to
in private
engage
sector
makes
is
a
absolutely
difference,
on point.
to the
and we
world,
think
and
there's
that
a
we
way
can lead
to
with
connect
diplomacy.
these two efforts
But
for
one of the areas
leverage.
where the United States
That'd be helpful. We're looking
is
for a
not
vehicle that will survive
positioned to
across
help
several
is where we don't
administrations
have
and put in
ambassadors
place
on the ground,
long-term
who
blended
can
finance
advocate.
opportunities.
And
Mr. Chairman,
as
would you allow
Senator
Dr.
Coons
Fowler to
just
briefly
pointed
answer?
out so eloquently, there are
Doctor.
more than 140 million
Thank you.
people
I'll
on
be
the
brief.
African continent
The
facing
programmatic elements
acute
that you
food
mentioned are
insecurity.
indeed some of the missing pieces that we often see
Without
in
addressing
Africa and
that,
other
we'll see the number of
continents for
displaced
scaling up
people
the kinds of
across the African
technologies we
continent
have
increase.
and
It's
for
already
getting
40
the private
million.
sector involved.
But
So those are
we don't
important
have
things
an
to highlight.
ambassador
Thank
to
you
the
for doing
African
so.
Union.
Well, I'd look forward to
We
a
don't
chance
have
to meet with both of
ambassadors
you to
in
hammer
8
out some
other
of the details
countries
to
on
make
the
sure we can move
continent
forward
where
in a
food
timely way.
insecurity,
Thank you for
many
your
of them
forbearance, Mr.
where
Chairman.
food
Thank
insecurity
you to
is a
both of our
real issue.
witnesses for your very long, engaged,
And,
determined,
by
and
the
effective
way, in those
advocacy on
countries,
behalf of the
our
world's hungry.
adversary,
It's great
our
to see
biggest
both of you. Thank
competitor,
you.
the
Senator
People's
Shaheen.
Republic of China, do have ambassadors who have been on the ground operating. So can you talk about how the absence of our ambassadors hinders our ability to respond to the needs of our partners with respect to food security? This is probably first for Dr. Fowler, because in your
Senator.
closing
You're indeed
comments,
correct.
you talked about the way we
have
choose
gotten
to engage
a
makes a
tremendous
difference,
amount of support
to
from
the
our
world, and that we
missions
can lead
in
with
Africa.
diplomacy.
They
But one-
are hampered when
but one of the areas
the leadership
where
at
the
the
United
top, when an
States
ambassador is
is
not
not
present.
positioned
And
to
you're
help
correct in
is where
saying
we
that
don't
China
have
is quite active
ambassadors
in
on the ground,
Africa.
who can
We've seen
advocate.
that.
And
One of
as
the
Senator
issues
Coons
that
just pointed
that
out
really
so
troubles
eloquently,
me
there
the
are more than
most
140
is
million
that
people
we-
on the African continent
In
facing
Africa,
acute
80%
food
of the
insecurity.
people in sub-Saharan Africa cannot
Without
afford a
addressing that, we'll
nutritious
see the number
diet.
of displaced people across the
There are a
African
number of
continent
causes behind
increase.
that,
It's
but
already
this is
40
an area
million.
where we need leadership, both
But
from
we
here
don't have
in
an
Washington,
ambassador
but
to
also
the
on
African
the ground
Union.
through the missions
We don't have
to make the
ambassadors
kind
in
of
8
programs
other
that
countries
my
on the
colleague, Ms.
continent
Esposito,
where
has
food
mentioned
insecurity,
actually
many of them
function
where food
properly.
insecurity is a
And
real
I would
issue.
also take the opportunity to mention
And,
that
by the way,
in
in
the
those
last 50
countries, our
years,
adversary, our biggest
our
competitor,
public
the
sector
People's Republic of
agricultural
China,
R&D
do
budget,
have
inflation
ambassadors
adjusted, is
who have
about
been
the
on the
same
ground
as it was
operating.
50 years ago.
So can you talk about how
today.
the absence of our ambassadors
In the interim,
hinders our
China
ability
has
to respond to
far
the needs
outpaced us
of
in
our
its
partners
public
with
sector
respect to
R&D
food
funding.
security?
I think it went from less than 1% in 1980 to now 23 or 24%. We have gotten a tremendous amount of support from our missions in Africa. Comparative advantage. They are hampered so much when the agricultural leadership at the top development ambassador is not present. And you're correct in saying that China is quite active in Africa. We've seen that. To the benefit of one of the issues Africa and other developing countries we need to keep most that comparative advantage as well.
I would certainly agree with that, and I failed to point out, as I was talking about the lack of ambassadors in Africa, that sadly what's holding up those ambassadors are our colleagues on the other side of the aisle.
We need leadership, both from
Ms.
here in Washington,
Esposito,
but
despite
also
women
on the
playing a
ground
crucial
through the
role in
missions
feeding
to
their
make the
families in
kind
the
of
world,
programs
they
that
often
my
eat
colleague,
last
Ms.
and they
Esposito,
eat
has
least.
mentioned
In
actually
fact, last year,
function properly.
84.2 million more women and girls were hungry than
take
men
the
and boys
opportunity to
worldwide.
mention that
So can you
in the
talk
last
about how
50
USAID
years,
structures the
our
food security
public
programs
sector
to try and
agricultural
address
R&D
that
budget,
disparity
inflation
between
adjusted,
men
is
and
about
women
the same
and what we're
as it
doing
was
to
50
help
years
ensure
ago
that women are
today.
engaged in all aspects
In
of
the interim, China
food
has
insecurity?
far outpaced us in its public sector R&D funding. I think it went from less than 1% in
Thank you, Senator. You're right in your concern. There was a
23
very
or
disturbing
24%.
report by FAO
we are
last
less
spring
than-
on women in
less than
agri-food
20.
systems, which
This
said that
has
despite our
historically been
efforts,
our
they still
comparative
produce
advantage.
24%
And so much
less food
of
on
the
their lands. They
agricultural
still have
research
less
and
access to
development that we've
finance, less
done,
access to
both
information,
aimed towards developing
and
countries, but
other
also
tools.
internally in the
And
United
one of the
States
things
has
we've done is
inured to the
to
benefit
increase our
of-
commitment
of Africa
significantly
and other
within Feed the
developing
Future, and
countries.
we've made
We
a
need to
public
keep up
commitment
that
at the launch of
comparative
that
advantage as
to
well.
reach no less than
I would
$250
certainly agree
million
with that, and
of
I failed
our
to point out,
portfolio
as I was
each
talking about
year,
the lack of
focusing on
ambassadors in
closing that
Africa,
gap.
that
We've set,
sadly what's holding up
top-line
those
targets
ambassadors are our
to,
colleagues on the other side of
close
the aisle.
reach parity on
Ms.
finance for men and
Esposito,
women in our
despite women
programs,
playing a crucial
and
role in
also
feeding their
to
families in
improve
the
women's
world,
dietary diversity.
they often eat last and they
We
eat
do
least.
have a port-
In
our
fact,
job is
last
to
year,
increase the food supply
84.2 million
and get
more
safe,
women and
healthy,
girls were
affordable
hungry
food
than
on the
men and
market.
boys
Our global
worldwide.
health colleagues are
So
very
can you talk
focused
about
on
how
exclusive
USAID structures
breastfeeding
the
and
food security
supplements, and our
programs
humanitarian
to try and
colleagues are
address
focused
that
on the treatment and
disparity
the
between
prevention
men and
of
women and what we're
moderate and
doing
acute
to
malnutrition.
help ensure
It
that
takes
women are
all of those
engaged in
things
all
together, not
aspects
just the
of
Feed the Future program or health,
food insecurity.
to get it's this really intractable issue on both
Thank you, Senator. You're right in your concern. There was a very
disturbing
disturbing report by FAO
Well,
last
thank
spring
you for
on
that,
women
and
in
thank you
agri-food
both for the work
systems,
that you're doing.
which
Did you
said
want
that
to
despite
respond,
our
Dr.
efforts,
Fowler?
they still produce
Thank you. I'd love to
24%
respond.
less
One
food
of
on
the
their
things that
lands. They
really
still have
breaks
less
my
access
heart,
to finance, less access to
on this
information,
subject is the degree of childhood stunting.
other tools.
Stunting is where the
And
height
one of the things
is
we've done is
inappropriate for the age, and there are
to increase our
150
commitment
million
significantly
children
within
under
Feed the
the age of
Future, and
5
we've
who are
made a public
stunted.
commitment
That's a
at the
physical
launch of
stunting.
that
It's a
to reach
mental
no less than
stunting. It lasts for
$350
the
million
rest of the life.
of
It's
our portfolio
impossible
each
for me to
year,
imagine how
focusing on
countries
closing
with
that gap.
very high
We've set
stunting rates,
top-line
20-30% of the
targets
children under
to
5 are going to
close
develop
the reach parity
economically
on
and otherwise.
finance.
Young's leadership on the AI issue and really challenging all of us, particularly every committee, to look within our jurisdiction as to how we can advance America's leadership on AI applications. And I must tell you, I never thought about AI in regards to dealing with world hunger, but clearly there is a major role it can play. And if there's impediments by law in our international efforts, that's in our committee's jurisdiction, and we want to make sure when there's an opportunity to move an AI bill, which the leadership is very committed to doing, and Senator Young is playing a key role in that, that we address those issues. So, Dr. Fowler, if you will get back to us, not only to Senator Young, but our committee, if there's legislative issues that could be made more friendly towards the application of AI, and of course the resource issues are also very much within our committee's jurisdiction. So we would appreciate getting back. And Dr. Fowler, Senator Risch and I took a little bit of homage with your use of the age as affecting AI. Just want you to know that. Senator Kane.
Thank you. I'm going to ask most of my questions about Haiti, but I did want to ask one question about Gaza. my memory isn't what it used to be. I don't recall during my time in the Senate the U.S. doing significant airdrops of food. Is this unusual? When was the last time we did airdrops of food like this?
Having spent a good portion of my career on the humanitarian side,
At Mercy Corps.
At Mercy Corps, but also as a member of the Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance, one of the places where airdrops, unfortunately, became sort of a mainstream part of the agenda was in South Sudan. Operation Lifeline Sudan, during those war years, was a regular, unfortunately, and expensive way to address communities that were completely cut off. No roads, heavy rains, and so it became a seasonal activity, but it is always one of last resort. I do recall one in Syria as well when I was working on that, the start of the war there.
It's last resort, and when there's no access, no roads, et cetera, I mean, sometimes it's all you can do. Here is a space where there are roads, there are border crossings, there are access points, and I think that I'm glad we're doing the food airdrops, but I think much more should be done through traditional means, delivery of food across the border. About Haiti, the situation in Haiti is just very, very grim. And I think there's some things that I hope we might do in this committee and in the Senate. We haven't had a confirmed ambassador to Haiti since 2021. Dennis Hankin was nominated in May of 2023, and we still haven't acted on that nomination. Second, we have approved funding for the multinational security force in Haiti that will be led by the Kenyans, but those dollars have not yet been released by the Senate. And I would just ask to the chair and ranking, I would love to work with you on this issue because it was extremely difficult to get the Kenyans to stand up and say they would lead a multinational security effort, and yet they did stand up because of the U.S. Indication that we would be providing funding for it. And that funding is withheld right now, and that really threatens whether the Kenyans will be able to do what they have agreed to do in tandem with the Haitian government. So I hope we can work on the committee, both on the getting an ambassador, but also on getting the multinational security support mission up and funded, because this is not just about hunger and instability in Haiti. It's 700 miles from the United States, and we've seen some of the challenges around migration and immigration are driven by instability in Haiti. But turning to the food security issue, the World Food Program says that food insecurity impacts about half the population in Haiti, making it one of the most food insecure countries in the world, certainly in the hemisphere. Rainfall deficit, flooding have damaged crops, and gang violence disrupts agriculture, trade, commerce, distribution of food. Can you share how the U.S. is working to counter these negative impacts and promote more food security in Haiti? And I would direct that question either to Dr. Fowler or Ms. Esposito.
Thanks. That's really sort of a two-part question in the sense that we have life-saving humanitarian aid going on through the Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, working with the UN World Food Program to get food parcels out through pre-positioned sites, as well as nutrition interventions to help stave off acute malnutrition. On the development side, this is what we call a resilience-focused country, trying to work in places where you have high fragility, high risk of urgent humanitarian need, and we're trying to develop local markets and local food production to help Haitians grow their own food. And we're also working on water management commissions, so connecting the food security objectives and the water security objectives. And also working on fortified foods, wheat flour substitutions that have nutritional value. All of these programs tend to be taking place well outside the urban areas where most of the challenges right now are ongoing, although we know that area is spreading. It is a very dynamic situation. I would need to check to see if those programs are continuing at this point or whether because of insecurity. I know the humanitarian piece is going on. The development portfolio is something I would have to get back to you on.
Dr. Fowler, could you comment on Haiti at all?
Sure. I'll just mention that Haiti is, in a sense, a poster child for the confluence of conflict and climate and the kinds of problems that combination can cause, both of which lead to national security issues for them and obviously for us. This is a sign of the kind of issues that we're going to be facing, I think, more and more in other parts of the world.
Even as I'm walking to the hearing today, there's news out about Haiti, about the instability of the current government and requests that the current kind of acting prime minister step down, and what's the next step. This is a situation that is devolved. I mean, if it's possible for it to devolve, it's devolving pretty quickly even right now, and I hope that this is something that the committee might be able to turn our attention to.
Thank you. Senator Risch?
Senator Kane, the request for that funding, the Four Corners have signed off on. And I have to tell you, I had reluctance. And let me tell you my reluctance. Nobody told me what this is for. I mean, there needs to be a plan going forward. Your description of the situation, apparently the 2 prisons they have got attacked this weekend and they let thousands of prisoners out. So I don't know. I mean, we all want to do something about it, but somebody needs to tell us what the money's going to go for. You know, what a path forward is there for. And you've described the situation as bleak. I think that's probably an understatement of what's going on there.
The sign-off was for, I believe, $10 million, which was a partial amount. There's still additional resources that are needed for the Kenyans to be able to go into Haiti, but there are some legal issues in regards to their going in. So this is an issue that we need to pay attention to. In regards to the ambassador, that has been approved by our committee. That's on the floor. So we have floor issues on bringing up nominations, something that we've talked about.
My hope would be, I was aware that some of the funding had been released and there had been sign-off for it. Senator Risch, you know, your question about how will the additional funding be used, obviously a very fair question. I mean, we're seeing this, you know, horrible devolution there. There are dollars available. The Kenyans have agreed to step up to provide some security that should be helpful. I just would hope the administration could work with us to provide answers to the questions you have, because if the Kenyans do not stand up this security force, nobody else has yet shown a willingness to take lead. So while we have somebody who is willing and they have their legal issues to work through, I hope we can get answers to your questions so that we can not lose the opportunity.
And your point is well taken about the fact that our interest, the United States national interest, is concerned for our own security because they're so close. And with that kind of instability, we all know what they're going to do. Yeah. If you live there, you'd want to come to the United States. And so I think probably whoever's the administration, if they're going to come up with requests, they need to really tie it into how it helps our security here. So thank you.
Ms. Esposito, I understand you wanted to give some additional response in regards to Senator Young's question on AI. Your mic's not on. Yeah.
There's a lot of work and room for growth on the AI side, and we do have analytics teams that are working on a whole range of modeling, and I'd be happy to provide further details to him in writing. I do know that one of our innovation labs at Pennsylvania State is using AI now as part of our agenda to really help farmers cope with a changing climate. As it gets warmer and hotter, we see ever more pests and diseases emerging in farmers' fields, and we have AI tools that are being used. People can access them on their mobile phone to very rapidly identify what that pest or disease is and get immediate advice on how to treat it. That's a very practical kind of field level example of the kind of, I think, really powerful transformation that AI can have. When people have the power of that information right in their phone and don't have to wait for an extension worker to show up in some really remote place, you're going to have, I think, it's a really important area that we need to be looking more at.
The committee will keep the record open till close of business tomorrow, and for questions for the record that may be asked by members of the committee, we'd ask that you respond promptly to those questions. And we thank you very much, not only for your being here today, but what you do every day to deal with this human rights challenge that we have globally. Clearly, U.S. leadership is indispensable. We need to do more, and we need to get others to do more. And we have to find more efficient ways to do our work, and technology can certainly help us solve some of these challenges. With that, the hearing will be adjourned. Thank you all very much.